Hi, painting students. I wanted to start off with just an overview of some of the different brushes and the palette knife and just kind of an introduction into that. Um, just to get us familiar with some of the materials we'll be using before we start actually trying to make paintings. I know some of you may have zero painting experience, and so just want to give you a quick little overview and then we'll get started.
Hi, painting students. I just wanted to give you guys kind of a quick rundown of the different brushes and brush shapes that you might see in the art room that you might use for some of your projects. The first one we have is right here on the end, furthest from the camera. This is called a mop brush. The mop brush is going to be used primarily in watercolor to pick up a lot of water at one time to be able to create a large wash. So maybe you have a large area in the background of your image that's the same color. You would use something like a mop brush for that. So you can pick up a lot of water at one time. You can cover up the page with it quickly. And that's important when you're working with watercolor because it can dry pretty fast. It can also be used to make washes out of thinned acrylic paints, which you would just thin down with water as well. So mop brush, basically, if you've got really thin paint or you're using a water base, you'll want to use this to make your washes. The next brush here is a fan brush. The fan brush is primarily a blending brush. You can use it for some other things. You can use it, if you kind of dab with it, you can use it to indicate things like flowers or leaves. You can also use it if you just kind of let it kind of be a little wild. It will make kind of nice natural looking clouds if you're doing a landscape or something. But primarily, the fan brush is a blending brush. The next one you have is a flat brush. So you can see the sides are straight. The top is straight across. Flat brush is really kind of a multi-purpose brush. Really the thing with the flat brush is just that it's going to give you distinct brush strokes. So you're going to see kind of the edges of your strokes because of these flat sides and that flat tip. You're going to see where your brush stroke ends. So that's neither a good thing nor a bad thing. It's just a stylistic choice. Do you want lots of texture in your painting? Do you want to see a lot of the brushwork in your painting? If you do want to see brushwork, a flat brush is a good choice for you. If you want your painting to be more subtle and you don't want to see a lot of the brushwork, this is a filbert. So it's similar in size and style to the flat brush, except you can see it goes straight up, but then it's got a curved edge and the tip is curved as well. And so what that means is that these brush strokes are not distinct like they are with the flat brush. This is going to have a very subtle look. It's going to feel more naturalistic than the flat brush will. So again, that's just a stylistic choice. This is also good for a lot of things. This is like my go-to brush usually. So you can use this for most things. The big thing to keep in mind is that if you want your brush strokes, if you want to see the edges of your brushwork, if you want to see a lot of lines, if you want to see kind of evidence of the hand, this isn't the brush you want to use. This is a filbert. You'll want to use the flat brush if you want to see things like that. So the filbert's not going to show you as much texture, basically. This is called a round. This round does not have a very good tip. It should come to a point at the tip. This one's just been worn out. So I have a better round here, actually, to show you what a round should look like on the tip. It should have a nice point to the tip. A round is basically used for detail work. So again, if I was doing something like a landscape and I need to do something like grasses or something, I would want to hold far back on the round. And I would just want to give it kind of a flick to create grasses or something along a riverbank. So the round is good for line work. It's also really good for detail work. If you have tiny little highlights, you're going to want to use something like a round that can do these highlights in different shapes. So the round actually is made to pick up a pretty good bit of paint for the size tip that it actually has, which is what makes it really good for detail stuff. So you get really good flow with the paint off of a round brush, and you have really good control to be able to do some nice precise type things. So just kind of review. The round is basically for detail. The filbert is multi-purpose, but has very subtle strokes. The flat is multi-purpose, but has very distinct strokes. The fan is going to be used for blending, and the mop will be used for washes. And the last thing here is just the palette knife. Palette knife is typically going to be used for, mixing your paints. So scraping one paint up, putting it in another, mixing them together. But it can also be kind of dipped into the paint. If you would want to dip the edge of a palette knife into paint and scrape it on the paper, then you get these really nice kind of distressed, kind of architectural looking lines. So if you were doing something like a building downtown, for the corner of that building, you might add some paint to the edge of this. You might scrape that down the edge of your paper, and then you might just scrape it back a little bit to give yourself like some distressed looking shadows. It gives some really nice texture. So I do like to use the palette knife a lot of times in paintings too. It kind of adds a feeling of the painting having some age to it. So that's just kind of a quick breakdown. So if you guys have questions, let me know. But I did just want to kind of go over this with you real quick. I would say the main ones to use, if you're not sure, if you have a limited selection anyway, I would have a round brush, I would have a filbert, and I would have a flat. And you'll be able to do almost anything with a round, a filbert, and a flat, especially if you're using acrylics. If you're using watercolors, you probably want the mop. And then kind of the fan, you can use it, and it's nice to have, but you can do without it as well. Some things are just made easier by the fan. So a round, a filbert, and a flat would be my go-tos. Anyway, I hope this helps you guys, and we'll get started on our first project soon.